There are lots of ways to explore outer space, but there's an inner world as well. So let's explore beyond light and sound and time and space. Join us as we listen in to an experienced inner naut. Get introduced to a new language to describe uncharted, inverted space. We enter through the portal of dreams.
Last night I was asked to respond to 3 questions. They were all simultaneous. The first question I raised inside of myself was, what is love? If you're going to experience gnosis from the approach that I'm talking about in terms of the intervals, where does love come into play? The second question had to do with the aspect of our lower self, which is oriented to matter, the overallness. That question was raised by a dream that my dream partner had, in which she was in an afternoon dream, and it really troubled her. She had to take a long walk because in that dream, she experienced something that swung and stayed overhead. Everybody was on the ground, divided in 2 parts. The part on one side where things were wonderful, kids playing and everything. The other part was something that she was releasing just by looking at it. There were snakes coming out of a box, and then they would grow and grow. They were not attacking her or anything. The best I could understand at that point was it had a lot to do with an overindulgence in her nature relating to her shamanic background. I also needed a better answer in relation to a question that was raised by something that was sent to me. There was a person trying to write down their understanding of the intervals in breath. And there was something about that which was really, really off. How do I make that known? Underlying that was a theme that has been going on for some time now, relating to the fact that we've spent thousands of years suffering, caught in our longing and yearning. I'm trying to approach this in a bhakti fashion. I'm recognizing the significance of St. John of the Cross kinds of behavior, as well as stories and tales about slaying the nafs of our being, purging basically. I had caught something that wasn't quite right, because I was able to see in the overallness that everything intertwined in a connected truth. And it was vast. You couldn't even scan the whole horizon of it. But when you were permeating, it permeated as a circle that was visible. It only excluded things because you were purging stuff. You were shutting yourself down. Your permeation is meant to be the totality. When it's able to be the totality, you have gnosis, which is the experience of the permeation like a circle. It includes the suffering when the permeation is complete, so it's a revelation, and it's exuding joyousness. That's when love comes into play, and that's when you can better understand the intervals. So I'll read what I wrote. First of all, I'll say a little bit about it. Then it will be repeated when I read it. The in-breath interval is kind of considered a home. It's a tremendous exuding that sweeps through everything in the overallness. It takes everything into account because it's experienced with such revelation. It's so deep, so touching. That leads to the experience of the in-breath as a station that includes love and gnosis. It's a station in terms of being able to be gnosis, a state in a relationship to being love. This is where you suffer when you go through aloneness and pain. That results in getting glimpses of gnosis or the permeation, but you don't sustain it. You're stabbing the heart principle of love. And so that's when you experience the out-breath. But the out-breath of longing and yearning is a form of death. You're as far away as you could possibly be, and you cry your way back to the principles about the false ego and stuff like that, instead of being able to just be a natural permeating within all of it as revelation. That process storms the gates, shakes down the experiences of the permeation, and any little experience with the permeation is a blinkering quality of gnosis. To the degree that that gnosis hits, even if it's 2/millionths of a second, as in the breaking down of the mucon, as it becomes an emptiness or a neutrino, and thus becomes the aliveness of light and batteries and other things. Then, to properly align all of this to understanding is what I tried to cover in my meditation dream. Fortunately, when I got deep enough to realize the sense of it, then came the awakening of the part that I didn't remember when I started writing. That formed the imagery necessary to paint the picture. Going through the meditation dream, I'm noticing that my life and the incredible events that are memorable cause a feeling of completion. Having appreciated what I was able to do and the struggles, but I don't dwell on the struggles. I remember the high points. Like people when they took a trip that might have been awkward, but it was just recalled as really, really wonderful. They still couldn't wait to get back home. That's just how they held the memory. So basically what I'm describing is a type of going through a life with a certain joy in the heart. And what I found was the emptiness of beingness, where I'm able to relax into a wonder that I somehow never completely lost in the sojourn of life, even when I was caught in the overallness. In the dream, I saw it as an image of your journey through life. Then I saw dots above me, flickers, sparkles. When I ran into these dots or touched them, I fell into an empty space, nirvana. There was no death there. It was wonderful. It was all in keeping with the type of revelation and joy and exuding. Really being able to appreciate life. And appreciating life, I was holding on to permeation. It goes through the overallness and is the aliveness. It is what is real and what is important. So that is at the top of the in-breath. And when I hit that, I can see why the Naqshband Sufis stress the importance of the interval of going home at the top of the in-breath. When in such a state, within, like one of revelation of how to take in and appreciate the overallness, the motion picture of things is there for us to see and hear and enjoy. We must note the in-breath interval, that one thing. I know also there's an interval at the end of the out-breath, but in the meditation, I didn't have an experience of it. I looked and looked for it, but it was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, I got it. I was fortunate in my meditation dream not to be immersed in the overallness, to be instead at a station in the overwhelm of an exuding heart. The overwhelm is life, and revelations are all there is. At this moment, an image blinked in. In this image, I had to let go to experience a kiss in all its wonder. There was a middle-aged woman that just showed up. She had no designs on me. She was just giving me something. At first, I questioned what. I wondered what she would do. But I went along with it. I was shown that you have to let yourself just experience it. You don't try to kiss back or anything because you don't know what you're doing. This way, I came to know all of the exquisite exuding features without the foolish outer illusion of having to relate this way or that. I was able to appreciate the in-breath interval that had been polished from the revelation. I was in the permeation, so I could simply experience it as a revelation. Another person in the scenario with me was asked if he would like to be shown this too. This guy had his own ideas about this stuff, needed to maintain his control. Deep down, we both knew that there was an experience there, but his qualms kept him in a mind sense orientation. So I kept telling him it was safe. He wouldn't lose anything of importance. He paused for a split second, like, maybe I can just do this. I gave him a push. The reason I knew that this was important was because of how I permeate and intertwine with everything in life, including him. I knew that this action promoted that for me. It opened something more from the in-breath interval. All that is around me also permeates. If he succeeded with imposing the qualm in his mind, this could affect me and my ability to swoon into this all-pervading permeation, revelation, and the heart quality of love taking everything in. However, we do not seem to be able to make the urging into life for the love created by thee and for thee without getting lost. It's one of the veils. And when we lose it, that is when the longing and yearning in the interval at the out-breath points to a final act of death. I understand that you don't have to see that. You don't have to make that small circle of suffering. The first scenario is a person I know sent a little writing they had done about the intervals. That was one scenario. So my dream partner's dream was another scenario involving snakes when she could be overhead and at the same time relate to a degree and comes to like the snakes that have grown while coming out and have all of their naff approaches. Even though they're not harmful, they're still disturbing, leaving us caught in a conundrum doing this foolishness in the overallness, stuck in manifestation, a type of matter. In this case, the matter with the snakes and of course dragons and stuff too. It's a little bit too much orientation to something that is aligned to the overallness. So I would refine it by saying that the quality of love was in the ecstasy and wonder that streams from the heart, that is exuding all the thankfulness that is possible for such a kiss in life. This is a never-ending sojourn in amazement. However, there are those that have to go through the dark night of the soul. They get lost. They keep trying to sort something out. They're stuck on the out-breath interval, dealing with the doingness. They're not able to simply themselves and they're not able to simply be themselves in the wonder of it all. They have gotten lost. Relief comes upon death. The literal death has the sting of 1,000 scorpions. Death and wrath are in that interval at the out-breath. We have life itself at the top, and you have a form of death at the bottom, which is experienced as being in a disenfranchised condition. Then we have the snakes in my dream partner's dream, representing the negative, egoic habits that she indulges. But she didn't have them evoked in terrorization, where they would have to bite, which chokes out the exquisiteness. They were in the overallness as consuming thoughts. We don't have the permeation through it all that we're sharing, so it becomes louder. To be consumed is to be affected. The aspect of ourselves that is affected this way goes through a painful and lonely purging process at the interval of the out-breath. A sense of death interval. To repeat it again, this interval is an incredible yearning and thirst that drowns the naffs. So yes, it serves a purpose that can begin awakening something so much more, but you can't sustain and hold on to it. You're sitting in a helpless condition, gaining glimpses of gnosis. It's still a substation to gnosis. I had a hard time with a dream I had a while back before they told me, Oh yes, people who do this do get something. Everything else is a total waste, but they do get something. But only in a very limited way. So you're actually doomed to adhere to this very limited way if you insist on the interval at the out-breath being the same as the interval on the in-breath. You would imagine that it has to be, but it is not quite that simple in how things open up. Because the aspect to that interval which refers to longing and whatnot has choked you down. It's similar to an experience in the ashram a while back when they had a quality that just permeated through them. Everyone could get up and talk. It didn't matter who it was. And the satsang that came through them was very, very touching and deep. Eventually, they had to integrate with the outer conditions, and in so doing, they became unbalanced, and anything they said actually tore down the heart. Then they would find themselves going through a purging process as if they're going to purge their way back to getting glimpses of the essence of something more, which they had experienced effortlessly when they were just permeating. They lost that quality where everything was permeating. They didn't even know that they were approaching life in a manner in which everything was permeating for them. When I have experienced it, what happens is a thought process that I could be experiencing and focus on. But if I hold something outside of letting that take over, I can sweep right by it. That's the importance of being able to speak without having to think, because it's a private way to permeate that sweeps right through things. So that's on now. That's the importance of being able to speak without having to think, because it's a private way to permeate that sweeps right through things. So, that's on now.
Listening In is a part of the Nameless podcast. Nameless, Evolution Begins Within, is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms. Or go to our website, thenamelessshow.com, for more information. Copyright 2021 under Sophia Unity Foundation, where wisdom is one.